Hi, I'm Danielle. For years, I quietly covered my brother's family's lavish $25,000 monthly lifestyle, their mortgage, their cars, their vacations. I was the silent engine that kept their perfect lives running. Then one day, my brother and his wife turned to me in the house I paid for and sneered, "Get out! We don't need you anymore." They thought they were kicking me out. But what they didn't know is that on moving day, the only people leaving would be them. Before we dive into this, please like this video, subscribe to my channel, and tell me in the comments where are you watching from. It all started the day we buried our mother. Standing beside our parents' graves, I was 26, and my brother Scott was 24. We were orphans, and the responsibility fell on me, as it always had. A week later, we were in our parents' quiet kitchen, a stack of bills on the table between us. Scott wouldn't even look at it. "I can't do this, Danny," he whispered, his voice cracking. "Mortgage payments, insurance. I don't even know where to start." His wife, Brenda, sat beside him, rubbing his back. "He's just so overwhelmed," she said softly. "We both are. I was overwhelmed too, but someone had to be the adult." "It's okay, Scott," I said. "We'll figure it out together." But together quickly turned into me. I took over the accounts, making the first payments from my own savings. I told myself it was temporary. But then Scott lost his job, and Brenda said he was too depressed to look for work. So, I covered their car payments, then their groceries, then the tuition for their 2 kids' private school. They decided the family home held too many memories and found a beautiful new house in a gated community. "It's an investment, Danny," Scott insisted. I knew it was a terrible idea, but I couldn't say no. I co-signed the mortgage, and soon enough I was the only one paying for it. It became a quiet, unspoken arrangement. I moved into the guest room of the house I was paying for, telling myself it was practical. Every month, I transferred $25,000 from my business account to theirs. It covered the mortgage, the lease on 2 luxury SUVs, the country club membership, and the endless stream of Amazon packages. I told myself it was my duty. I was the strong one, the provider. But the truth was, I wasn't a provider. I was a doormat. My life shrank while theirs expanded. My world became a series of spreadsheets and deadlines. I worked 70, sometimes 80 hours a week at the marketing firm I had built from the ground up. My clothes were simple, bought from discount stores. I ate leftovers at my desk, fueled by cheap coffee, while I approved payments for their dinners at 5-star restaurants. One afternoon, Brenda came into my room without knocking, holding up a new designer handbag that cost more than my car. "What do you think, Danny?" she chirped. "You only live once, right?" She then glanced at my worn-out sweater and frowned. "You should really get some new clothes. It's kind of embarrassing when we have guests over." She left, and I just sat there. I was the reason she could afford that purse, and I was an embarrassment. The cruelty was often subtle. They would talk about their upcoming trip to Italy in front of me, never thinking to invite me. They'd show me pictures of their children's expensive birthday parties. Parties I had funded but wasn't welcome at because I was always too busy. One month, cash flow was tight, and I had to pull from my personal savings to make their payment. That night, I decided to talk to Scott. "Things were a little tight this month," I began gently. "I was thinking maybe we could cut back on a few things." He didn't even look up from his phone. "Like what?" "Well, maybe the country club membership?" He finally looked at me, his eyes cold. "Danny, the club is for the kids. It's about networking. You make plenty of money. Don't start acting like a martyr." He stood up. "You should be thankful you can even help. It's the least you can do. We're your only family." I just sat there, stunned into silence. In his mind, my sacrifice wasn't a gift. It was an obligation. I was living in a house full of people, a house I paid for, and I had never felt more alone. The breaking point came on a Tuesday evening. I had just come home after a brutal day and wired the $25,000. I walked into the living room to find Scott and Brenda sitting on the couch, waiting. They had matching, rehearsed expressions that made my stomach clench. "Danielle, sit down," Scott said, gesturing to the armchair. I sat. "Is everything okay?" Brenda spoke first, her voice smooth and empty. "Scott and I have been talking," she said. "We've been doing a lot of thinking about what's best for our family." Scott leaned forward. "This is our home, Danny, our family's home. And we think it's time you found your own place." The words hung in the air, suffocating. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. "What are you talking about?" I whispered. It isn't your house, Danielle, Brenda said, her voice turning sharp. You've been a guest here, and we appreciate it. But the kids are getting older. We need our privacy. My heart felt like it had dropped. It was an eviction. I looked at my brother, searching his face for some sign of guilt or love. I found nothing but cold resolve. So you want me to leave? I asked. Yes, Scott said flatly. We'll give you a month to pack your things. We're moving in permanently. Permanently. As if I was just a temporary fixture to be removed. I thought of the 80-hour weeks, the lonely dinners, the endless sacrifices. I had given them my life, and in return they were throwing me out like garbage. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. And now they had decided the resource was no longer needed. For a moment, I thought I was going to scream. I wanted to rage, to throw the financial statements in their faces, to list every sacrifice. But then I looked at their faces. Brenda was watching me closely, a faint, triumphant smirk playing on her lips. She was waiting for the explosion. She wanted drama. In that instant, something inside me went cold. The fire went out. I finally understood that arguing with them was pointless. You can't reason with people who see you as an obstacle. My voice didn't matter to them. So I decided to give them what they had always given me, silence. I took a slow breath. I let the silence stretch, watching as their smug confidence began to waver. They were expecting a storm, and I was giving them a dead calm. Finally, I spoke one word. Okay. It came out soft but firm. Not defeated, but final. I stood up and turned and walked toward my room. As I walked away, I heard Brenda whisper to Scott, "Well, that was easier than I thought." They smirked, thinking I was a pushover. They thought they had won. What they didn't know was that my power wasn't in shouting. It was in the documents filed away in a safe deposit box. It was in the name printed on every single bill. They thought they were closing a chapter, but I was the one who had written the entire book. The secret was born from practicality. When our parents passed, Scott's credit was a disaster. The estate lawyer, Mr. Harrison, had been very clear. For the sake of protecting our inheritance from creditors, everything should be legally in my name. The house, the accounts, everything. I agreed, thinking it was just a temporary shield. When we bought the new house, the bank insisted I be the sole owner on the title. The mortgage was in my name. The utilities were in my name. The SUVs were leased in my name. The credit card Brenda used was on my account. Scott never read the fine print. Brenda was too busy picking out paint colors. They were living in my house, driving my cars, and spending my money. Legally, they were nothing more than long-term tenants with no lease. Their occupancy was about to expire. The night they kicked me out, I didn't cry. I went to my room, closed the door, and called Mr. Harrison. "It's Danielle Carter," I said, my voice steady. "I need your services." The next 2 weeks were a quiet flurry of activity. I forwarded years of documents to my lawyer. I arranged for a moving company to put my possessions into storage. I found a small, furnished apartment downtown. All the while, Scott and Brenda treated me like a ghost, loudly discussing their redecorating plans within my earshot. They thought they were rubbing salt in my wound. They didn't realize they were just giving me more resolve. The last Saturday of the month arrived, bright and sunny. I sat on the front porch with my coffee and waited. At 9 a.m., a moving truck parked in front of the house. Scott and Brenda came out beaming. "Morning, Danny," Scott said with false sympathy. "Don't look so sad. It's for the best." Brenda walked past me without a glance, directing the movers. Just then a black sedan pulled up. A man in a sharp gray suit stepped out. It was Mr. Harrison. He held a leather briefcase, and his calm authority immediately commanded attention. The movers stopped. Scott's smug grin faltered. "What's going on?" Scott asked, his eyes darting between me and the lawyer. Mr. Harrison walked calmly up the driveway and stopped in front of my brother. "Mr. Scott Carter?" he asked. "Yeah, that's me," Scott said, puffing out his chest. "Who are you?" Mr. Harrison opened his briefcase and pulled out a thick envelope. "My name is David Harrison. I am Ms. Danielle Carter's legal counsel," he said, handing the envelope to Scott. "This is for you." Scott tore it open and pulled out the documents. I watched as the color drained from his face. He looked up, his eyes wide with panic, first at Mr. Harrison, and then finally at me. "Wait, what do you mean eviction?" Scott barked, waving the papers. "This is a joke, right? This is my house. I assure you, Mr. Carter, this is no joke. Mr. Harrison said calmly. You seem to be operating under a misunderstanding. Brenda rushed over, snatching the papers. Her face contorted into a mask of horror. What is this nonsense? Danielle, tell him to stop, she shrieked. I didn't say a word. I just took a slow sip of my coffee. Let me be perfectly clear, Mr. Harrison continued, his voice carrying in the quiet morning. This property is, and always has been, legally and solely owned by my client, Ms. Danielle Carter. Scott shook his head in denial. No, we bought it together. His voice trailed off. He knew he had never read the papers. The mortgage is in her name. The title is in her name. Every utility bill is in her name, Mr. Harrison stated. The 2 vehicles in your possession are also leased in her name. For the past 5 years, you have been living here as occupants with her permission. He paused. That permission has been revoked. The document you are holding is a formal eviction notice. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises. The silence that followed was absolute. Scott's face was a pale, sickly gray. Brenda looked as if she had been slapped. You can't do this, Scott finally stammered, his voice a hoarse whisper. He looked at me, his eyes pleading. Danny, please. We're family. He dared to use that word now, after he had tried to make me homeless. The people who had stood so proudly just minutes before were now crumbling. The arrogance was gone, replaced by a desperate panic. Danielle, you can't do this to us. Brenda wailed. Where will we go? What about the children? Scott's pleading turned to anger. This was your plan all along, wasn't it? He spat. To humiliate us. I finally stood up. I walked over and stood in front of my brother. For years, their words had been my cage. Their demands were my obligations. But standing there, watching their world collapse, their voices didn't matter anymore. They were just noise. My silence was my victory. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the keys to the house. I turned to the head mover. Plans have changed, I said calmly. I need you to clear out the contents of the house and put them into a storage unit. Mr. Harrison has the details. Then I turned my back on my brother and his wife. I walked to my car, got in, and started the engine. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. For the first time in a decade, I wasn't responsible for their problems. I was finally, completely, blessedly free. Sometimes, silence is the most powerful answer. I didn't just get my house back that day. I got my life back. I learned that family isn't an obligation, but a bond you build through mutual love and respect. Karma has a funny way of installing a toll booth when you least expect it. So, I have to ask, would you have revealed the truth earlier, or waited like I did? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and share if you believe karma always arrives on time.